Yellow, you have another story for me? Okay, I'll be there.
Southeast Asia, an A-list holiday destination with an amazing diversity of cultures, religions and shrines, coupled with the excitement of fast-paced cities that never sleeps. Also being the food hub of the world, you can find all sorts of exotic cuisines and large varieties of seafood just about anywhere you walk.
However, with the amazing attractions throughout Southeast Asia, the coastline is densely populated and it's hard to find an area that is not used for an economic activity.
Just the coastline of the South China Sea alone has a population of 300+ million people. That's more than 5% of the entire world population. In coastal areas, the aquaculture of fish and shrimp are everywhere, massively contributing to the global markets.
The prawns you enjoy at family feasts are very likely produced here in Southeast Asia. Moving inland, all sorts of crops are produced, and the region is known as a massive rice producer.
Places like Thailand play a critical role in processing millions of tons of tuna harvested from the Pacific Islands. Next time you purchase a tin of tuna, chances are it is processed here in Thailand. The region's seafood and tourism industries are the biggest drivers of the economies in the countries and are heavily dependent on the long-term sustainability of coastal and marine environments, which provide the goods and services. But the harsh reality is that the degradation of these environments is occurring at high and increasingly concerning rates. There are a whole range of threats that are causing this, but the fundamental root cause is in fact the global demand for these products.
Whatever the product may be, the demand for it relies on heavy inputs, but with that, generates massive wastes from all angles and end up here in the coastal waters.
With 300+ million people populated along the coast, a large percentage of that are human waste, both sewage and solids. Again, Southeast Asia produces, processes and packages so many different food products that are exported all over the world and supplies the increasingly large domestic markets. But this doesn't come without large costs, both to the producers, the environment and even public health. More intense production in agro and agriculture also means more prevalence of disease or pests in crops. New and more potent pesticides seems to be popping up everywhere, and some farmers just get this stuff dished out to them from big businesses in unlabeled drums, with no indication of what chemicals they contain. Wastewater containing unused feeds and antibiotics can be seen flowing into the coastal waters. With the region booming also, investment in industrialization is skyrocketing, and the manufacturing giants who supply the world with electronics and other high-value goods are causing major byproducts. Heavy metals such as arsenic, mercury, cadmium, and many others often end up in the water bodies that drain into coastal waters and contaminate the seafloor sediments and marine resources like shellfish. The issue of seafood safety is one on everyone's mind. Shellfish like cockles, clams, oysters and many others are known to bioaccumulate materials from the water they feed on. So, if human waste containing disease-causing pathogens come into contact with these stocks before harvesting, there is a huge risk these could be passed on to consumers. This is serious and sometimes life-threatening. Diseases like hepatitis A and typhoid, which I hear are quite prevalent, but the cause effect is not often picked up as many villages and communities lack basic health services.
Most communities along the coastline here in Southeast Asia lack even basic sewage treatment, so large volumes of human waste end up directly in the water.
The problem here seems to be that while most countries are trying to establish pollution control standards, again there seems to be a lack of financial resources and few people with the capacity to monitor, regulate and control pollution discharges. The fundamental root cause of this pollution problem is simply the costs and lack of financial resources to tackle the problem. It seems the countries find themselves in a catch-22 position where they are driven to meet market demand to generate export earnings, but those earnings are insufficient to help them tackle the associated environmental problems. I get the feeling that there is a gross imbalance in the world where people of the developed world want all these food products, but the process of meeting this demand creates massive environmental problems in the developing region of Southeast Asia. To me, it seems a gross injustice and feel the global community should step up, acknowledge that they fundamentally rely on this region for food, and work towards factoring in financial assistance to prevent or fix the environmental impacts their demand creates. Despite these challenges, I've learned the countries bordering the South China Sea have acknowledged the urgent need to address this issue, often mainly due to public health and seafood safety concerns. They have undertaken some important work together to identify and to help them communicate their priority needs with the development assistance from donors and development banks for larger scale investments to deal with the issue of land-based pollution. This work was initially undertaken with the financial support of the Global Environment Facility under the banner of the UNEP and GEF South China Sea project, which formulated an intergovernmentally endorsed strategic action program which outlines targeted costed actions to reverse environmental degradation trends in the South China Sea. A big part of this work involved assessments and modelling of the capacity of the South China Sea to naturally absorb nutrients and to predict impacts under different loading scenarios. As the countries moved forward with the Strategic Action Program implementation, the communities identified that this model be refined and applied to determine the total contaminant loading of the South China Sea basin to absorb and assimilate 7 heavy metals. Among these emerging issues is that of microplastics entering the marine ecosystems. These microplastics are caused by the breakdown of the larger volumes of plastic solid wastes and products with microbeads making their way into the sea. While the exact effects on marine ecosystems and seafood safety are not known, CEFDEC has commenced the sampling of microplastic distribution and density in the seas of East Asia during its regular research cruises, which will provide valuable information for long-term management of this issue in the region's fisheries. It is obvious that the extent of land-based pollution in the South China Sea is massive and will require enormous investment in capital infrastructure to reduce its impacts. The regional science initiatives being implemented under the banner of the South China Sea Strategic Action Program implementation are innovative and priority actions that will provide critical decision-making and planning tools to ensure large-scale investment in addressing the causes of land-based pollution of the South China Sea marine basin. Making this story, I couldn't help but think that given the critical role of Southeast Asia in supplying food to the world and emerging importance in manufacturing of electronics and other high-value goods, the global community must step up and support the region in safeguarding the South China Sea from land-based sources of pollution, of which a large proportion is the result of increasing international demand for these goods.
A starting point is building understanding and awareness. So please help us share this global message to the rest of the world with your networks as well. It would really help us and will go a long way.